Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how to format a professional report in Google Docs. The reason that I'm going to show you this in Google Docs is because it's very similar if you did this in Microsoft Word, and most of the groups in this class end up using Google Docs for their projects. So that's why I think it's very useful to understand specifically how to do this. So in particular, what I want to cover today is the following steps. First off, how you format the header, the title, and the subheaders in your document. Next, how to change the default fonts for any of the different types of formatting that you've put in. Next, I'll talk about section breaks and page breaks. Then I want to talk about how, if you've done the other steps above correctly, you can automatically create a table of contents. And then finally, I want to mention how to insert page numbers. So let's go through each of these. First off, the title, header, and subheader formatting. Let's say that you've put into Google Docs a list of all of the sections and subsections of the report that you're going to need to create. What you then need to do is each of them, when you normally put them in, will just be in what's called normal text, which is the default. When you highlight one of those sections of the text, you can then click on where it says normal text, and you can change the type of text. In this case, the title page, we want to use the title. So if you then click title, what happens is it changes it to the default format for titles in your document. And you can see how that changed in the little sequence that I've shown you here. So you want to go through and do that for each of the different sections of your report. And so you would go through that step by step, just like what I showed you for title page. When you do that, for this particular example, you can see that I have different sizes of fonts. The title page and table of contents are the largest font, and I chose the title font for those. The reason I chose the title font is that those are not like chapters in the report. For the chapters, it is best to use header 1, and that's what I'm showing you here with the green arrows. And then for the sections within a chapter, I would use header 2. And if you needed even smaller subsections, there's also a header 3 involved. And then you see the places where it says text goes here. That would actually be the body of your report, and that would actually be in the normal font, if you will. So that's the next step of what I would recommend that you would do on your report. Once you've done that, then you can personalize the report more by changing the types of default fonts for each of these different categories. So let me show you an example of how you might do that. So let's say that you wanted to change the header 1 from being the default to making it bold, and also changing the color, in this case, green. And you can see that I've done it there, and then I've highlighted the change that I made, but it hasn't done it in all places yet. In order for it to do it in all places where it is a header 1, what you would do is you would take that section that I've highlighted, you then click on Format. You then, as in the submenu, you want paragraph styles, and in the sub-menu, you want heading 1, which is the heading that you are working on. And then what you want to do is update heading 1 in all of the other places to match the one that you've just put in. When you do that, your report will now show that in all places that were labeled heading 1, it has that same format, and it did it very, very simply. Okay, that's changing default fonts. Next thing that you want to do is to make sure that the pages, new pages, always start in the right places. You do that using the section break function and the page break function. So the way that you would do that is in your document, You move to where you want to force things to start on a new page. When you've moved the cursor to that location, you press Insert. You then press Break, and then you have several choices. And in general, for the headers, the header 1, which I would call the equivalent of having chapters, you want to call those section breaks, and it will then move them to the top of the next page. So what you would then want to do is systematically go through and do that in every part of your report. So the next thing you want to do after you've done that is to automatically create a table of contents. And I will show that to you in slides, but I'm going to show that to you also by actually showing an example of the Google Doc in which we're going to do that. So the Google Doc that you see here already has the different pages, if you will. So there's the title page, there's the table of contents, and I've already inserted the page breaks. There's design problem 1 with its subheadings. There's design problem 2, etc., all the way to the end of your report. So now what we want to do is we want to take those sections and we're going to create a table of contents. Creating a table of contents is extremely easy and almost magical the way in which it works. What you do is you click on Insert. You then, at the bottom, it says Table of Contents. You have some choices of the kinds of table of contents. I like the one with the numbers. So that's the one with page numbers. I click that. Boom. There's the entire table of contents for the document. You see how it has the sections. It indents and does the subsections, and it tells you the page numbers. And as the report changes, you can update that. You update it by clicking that little circle, and it will change the page numbers and add everything else in. So it's extremely flexible in the way in which it works. And so that's a very important and very useful thing that you can do as well. The final thing I'm going to show you, and you see that I have page numbers on here, I'll show you how to do that also. So in order to do that, I'm going to jump back to the presentation. And in the presentation, I will show you again, basically to remind you how you automatically create a table of contents. So the way you do that is you go to the place where you want the table of contents to appear. You click Insert. You then click Table of Contents at the bottom. You pick the type of table of contents, and boom, it's done. So inserting page numbers is also very straightforward. It doesn't matter where you are in the document. What you do is you simply click on Insert at the top menu. You then click on Page Numbers, and you have multiple options in terms of where you would put those page numbers and how that would all work. So that's everything I want to cover in this tutorial. A couple of parting thoughts. If you can't quite follow all this fast, you may want to repeat this video. If something doesn't make sense after you've looked at it, you may also take any of the terminology that I've used, put it into Google. You'll find other videos that demonstrate the same things. I really recommend that you learn how to do this, that you use this right from the get-go as you work on your project reports, because it will save you a lot of time.